Good afternoon, dear students. Complete our subject concerning negation. In the previous lecture, we have said we have learned how to negate sentences. What are the types of of negation? What was meant by alternative negations? What do we use, or how can we do when we have more than one negation in the sentence? How can we deal with assertive and non-assertive form? We have learned how to transform from the positive form to the negative form, keeping or taking into consideration the assertive and non-assertive forms. Let us move, or let us discuss this concept, the scope of negation. If I have a sentence, may I ask, what is the scope of negation in this sentence? The scope, from its meaning, what is the starting point of negation, and to which extent it may extend. Let us see what is meant by scope of negation. Let me Yes. First, a negative form may be said to govern or determine the occurrence. Please pay attention for these two brackets or determine the occurrence of a non-assertive form. Only if the latter means the non-assertive form, maybe anybody, yet, either, neither, only, before, they are all non-assertive form, is within the scope of negation. What does it mean? Within, this is, by the way, this is the definition of the scope of negation. Within the stretch of language over which the negative meaning operates. The scope of negation normally extend, this is the boundaries of negation in any sentence, extend from the negative word itself to the end of the clause. Yani from the negative word to the end of the clause, or to the beginning of a final adjunct. Maybe this final adjunct is not within the scope of negation. Another subject and any adjunct occurring before the predication. Before the predication normally lie outside it. Means, yani, definitely we do not start the sentence with a negative, for example, subjects. So we can exclude the subject and start with what is before the predication, normally outside it. The operator is sometimes within, and sometimes outside, and we are going to see what does this mean. There is thus a contrast between, please, yani what we are just said should be interpreted in these examples. Let us see what is meant by the scope of negation. Listen, please. I definitely didn't speak to him. This is the subject. This is an adjunct before the predication. Okay? The subject and an adjunct before the predication. Listen, look at these brackets. This is the scope of negation, from the negative word to the end of the sentence. It starts from this negative particle to the end of the sentence. What is before the negative particle is not within the scope of negation. Means it is definite, you see the chiffon is positive, that I did not means did not speak to him. Okay, again, look at this one. I did not definitely speak to him. هسه عندي الادجنct صارت within the scope of negation because as I've said it starts from the negative word to the end of the sentence. So in this one I will negate what the adjunct. It is not definite that I did. When صار negation صار before the adjunct. هنا before the main verb. شوفون the main verb here is negated. When an adverbial is final, يعني if I have the adjunct at the end of the sentence. However, it may or may not lie outside the scope. I was not listening all the time. I was not listening all the time. وياي هسه ماما. It starts from this negative word, not, and here what there is some sort of stress here. I have a stress on the process of listening all the time means I listened none of the time means here the scope start from or what I say here the adverbial مثل ما قلنا the adverbial may or may not. هسه هنا may or may not. Here here it is what within or is now within the scope of negation. So I listen none of the time. In contrast to this one, I wasn't listening all the time. I wasn't listening all the time means I listened some of the time. Why here listening all the time was not listening. I listened some of the time, not all the time, only some of the time. If an assertive form is used, it must be please. يعني هسه عندي if it is an adjunct, whether it is within the scope or within or not within, so depending on its position in the sentence. If I have an adverbial and all the time here, it may be or may not, so it can be interpreted or paraphrased by these two ways of ambiguity. But if I have an assertive form is used, it must lie outside the scope. Clear? If I have assertive form, some, something, somebody, already, so it should be outside the scope of negation. Let us see. I didn't listen to some of the speakers. تشوفون وين صار عندي هنا I exclude some. Why excluded? Because it is an assertive form. I didn't listen to some of the speakers means I listened to some. But if I do not have some, I will start from the negative word to the end of the sentence because I do not have an assertive form here. I didn't listen to any of the speakers. تشوفون وين السكوب starting from not, okay, to the end of the sentence. I listened to none. As we have seen, the scope can sometimes extend into a subordinated clause. I didn't know that anyone was coming. ما راح نبدي نيل particle not to the end of the sentence. يعني what will extend and will be or this subordinated clause either that will be included within the scope of negation. Yes. Thank you, students, and we will come